Trump is all about violence, somebody else's violence. Trump is essentially a cowardly little, well, he's not little, he's a bloated bum. But he's one of those guys who, I don't know, if you were in high school, if you're a male and you were in high school, you may have remember when there would always be some instigator who would say, "Let you and him fight." That's Trump. Trump is a cowardly piece of shit. He really is. You know my feelings about Trump. But he inspires his vermin-like cult followers to do his violence. Oh, he can be verbally violent. Oh, yeah, he's a real insulting son of a bitch, even worse than me at times. But as far as actual violence, he loves to see other people doing it. That's why he inspired people to march down Pennsylvania Avenue to the state capitol on January 6, 2021, and commit acts of violence and death and destruction against people defending our Constitution and our Constitution itself. But Trump doesn't give a shit. There's no law that applies to Trump. Nothing in his mind applies to him. His followers, who are almost as sick and degenerate as he is, should understand that there are consequences to what they do. Trump knows he can buy his way out. So the latest of what these fringe assholes do, the names and addresses of members of the grand jury that indicted the orange bastard and 18 of his co-defendants on racketeering charges this week, those names and addresses have been posted on a shitty little website that often features violent rhetoric of one sort or another. This is according to NBC News. Now, NBC decided not to name the website in their report because they just want to avoid further spreading the information. The information is at this filthy little toilet website, but NBC doesn't want to give it further publicity. Also, the Fulton County District Attorney's Office, Bonnie Willis's office, declined to comment. She has faced racist threats before the return of the indictment. And as any person of color who is in law enforcement, especially where it concerns this filthy pig Trump, is going to receive racist comments, death threats, you know the drill. So additional security measures were put in place. Some employees that worked for Ms. Willis were allowed to work from home. Now, the grand jurors' addresses were spotted by a nonpartisan research group called Advance Democracy. That group is founded by Daniel Jones, a former FBI investigator and staffer for the U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee. Mr. Jones, if Daniel Jones is his name, and I'm not saying it isn't, but if that is his real name, he said this, quote, "It's becoming all too commonplace to see everyday citizens performing necessary functions for our democracy being targeted with violent threats by Trump-supporting extremists. The lack of political leadership on the right to denounce these threats, which, by the way, serve to inspire real-world political violence, the lack of political leadership to denounce this is shameful," end quote. Yes, it is. So it's left up to law enforcement to protect the people who are trying to protect us. By that, I mean the courts, the grand jurors, the witnesses, the jury pool. Now, this website, or this organization, I should say, this research group, Advanced Democracy, also noted that people were posting the names and images of other people believed to have been grand jurors on other social media sites, not just this toilet site that is mentioned, but not identified by NBC News. So the people who go to the toilet site are reposting these names and addresses of the grand jurors on other social media sites. And the posts asserted that the jurors had in the past posted on social media in support of Bernie Sanders and Raphael Warnock, senator from here in Georgia, and former President Obama, the Black Lives Matter movement, which makes them all suspect to these white devils, right? right. Now, these grand jurors, the ones who issued up the indictments from Fani Willis's 2.5-year investigation, they've come under attack in the days since that indictment, which, by the way, as you know, is the fourth criminal indictment brought against this twice impeached son of a bitch. A pro-Trump Nazi forum had a post that read in response to a post including the names of the jurors, quote, "These jurors have signed their death warrant by falsely indicting President Trump," end quote. I've said this a million times too, but what could possess these white Christians to so willingly submit to this filthy, bloated pig, Donald Trump, who has zero respect for them except as a source of income, money? I'll never understand that. But they do, and they will continue to support him. They will continue to love him. They will continue to see him as the little brother of Jesus Christ. They will continue to pervert and crap on this religion called Christianity. You know, people wonder many times why I am so absolutely insistent on condemning Christianity. And I keep pointing out that people are trying to overthrow and destroy our government. They're not Jews. They're not Hindus. They're not Muslims. They're not Buddhists. They're Christians. They're Christians. They call themselves Christians. They have as much to do with the teachings of the rabbi from Nazareth as I have to do with respect for Donald Trump. In other words, zero. Now, example of this kind of filth and hatred. I'm sure you've heard about this now. A Texas woman has been charged with threatening to kill the judge, Tanya Chatkin, federal judge in D.C., who's overseeing the Orange Bastard's prosecution on charges of his involvement in trying to overthrow the 2020 election and in the process bring an end to American democracy. Now, this crazy bitch woman down in Texas, who is white, who is a Christian, her name is Abigail Shri, and she lives in Alvin, Texas. Alvin, Texas. Now, I don't know anything about her or about where she lives, but I would just be willing to bet that, first of all, she does not take care of herself physically. She probably looks like hell. I would assume she lives in a mobile home out there in a trailer. Maybe she has it sitting on a little piece of ground on daddy's property somewhere. She probably sits on her large ass every day and watches television and comes up with insults and death threats that she can send out to people. But Abigail called Judge Chatkin's chambers on August 5th. That was 2 days after Trump was arraigned on the election interference charges in D.C. And this ignorant idiot left a voicemail attacking the judge. And the voicemail included racist slurs. This is all according to the criminal complaint that was unsealed a few days ago regarding this crazy bitch. In the message that she left on the phone, Abigail told Judge Chatkin, quote, "If Trump doesn't get elected in 2024, we are coming to kill you. So tread lightly, bitch. You will be targeted personally, publicly, and your family, and all of it." Oh, and she also threw, end quote, she also threw in a couple of N-words, as you can well imagine. Now, this crazy jack-off, Abigail Shri, has also issued threats against Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, Black Democrat Congresswoman from Texas, around Houston, right? According to this complaint. Now, the Orange Bastard himself, the leader of this mob of worms, he's got a long history of verbally attacking judges and other people who get involved in the criminal cases that arise because of his criminal behavior. And he particularly likes to attack judges and witnesses on his little social media toy platform. For example, the day before, this crazy bitch in Alvin, Texas, called the judge's office. The orange vomit was on his social media site. And he posted this message saying, all caps, "If you go after me, I'm coming after you." Now, we all know about that. We've seen it. It's very typical of a fascist or a mafia member. Trump is both. He models himself after both. Well, late last week, Judge Chatkin issued or addressed that issue, what Trump is doing, and she warned Trump that she would take measures to ensure that he did not make what she called inflammatory statements about this case in a way that might intimidate witnesses or otherwise harm the integrity of the proceeding. Now, that's what the judge said. Well, Judge Chatkin, with all due respect, what does this son of a bitch have to do in order to trigger a kind of response that will put his ass in jail until his trial? I mean, if I were issuing these kinds of threats, if I were promoting people to do this kind of stuff, if I were saying the things that this orange bastard says on his toy social media site, or if you were, where you or I or both of us would be at this point. We would be held in a jail cell until the trial because of what we're saying, what we're doing. I don't think Judge Chatkin is going to tolerate much more of this shit. I hope not. But even after the judge warned this orange bastard, he immediately had to test the boundaries of what the judge was saying by posting that little collection of garbagey messages on his toy social media platform. And most of what he posted just was repeats or largely amplified the criticism that other people had lodged against her. I mean, if Trump is anything, he is a repetitive little prick. He's not original. He's not creative. But in one post written by one of the worms who are allies of Trump, and that would be the lawyer Mike Davis, in that post there's a large photo of Judge Chatkin accompanied by text that falsely says that she had, quote, openly admitted she's running election interference against Trump, end quote. This is their fallback position now, you see, that because this is happening now and the orange vomit has declared himself a candidate, this is all about preventing him from being president again. And in two other posts, the orange bastard wrote, quote, "She obviously wants me behind bars. Very biased and unfair." That last is all caps. And I mentioned before that Chief Justice John Roberts has the wherewithal staring him in his goddamn face to declare Trump ineligible to run for the presidency, which would certainly bring all of this bullshit to a stop, at least the Trump campaign. Not based on any action taken by Jack Smith or Fani Willis or anybody else, Judge Chatkin, but based on the fact that Trump has made himself ineligible because of paragraph 3 of the 14th Amendment that was added to the Constitution after the Civil War to make sure that the scum bastard white people who had instigated the deaths of 7, 8, 900,000 Americans could not run for office, federal office, because they had advocated against the destruction of the United States, which Trump has done. So Chief Justice John Roberts, I understand it's up to him. He has the ability to call a press conference tomorrow, if he wanted to, and say the Constitution prohibits Trump from running again. You think he will? Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. You know, the Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical talk radio network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.